Hi, my name is Bryce Macy, and I am from California Baptist University. This is my research project for KIN473. My study is the effects of dynamic versus static stretching in regard to speed. The need to stretch before practice or competition has been a matter that has arguments whether it is beneficial or not when it comes to speed. Dynamic stretching or static stretching before anything that has to do with speed. Using the right form of stretching is very pertinent because it could help them perform better and will reduce their chance of injury during their competition. This has been a huge thing. I even have personal experience with this. I have been an athlete since I was 6 years old, and I played in college at CBU. And we have went back and forth between dynamic stretching and static stretching, but I've heard a lot that dynamic stretching is better because it warms up your muscles and it allows your muscles to essentially loosen up. That's kind of the term that everyone uses, and allows you to have your maximum performance available. I think that this is an issue. If not stretching properly, it could allow the muscles to not become warm and loosen up, like I said. This would then cause injury and possibly miss parts of their season. The reason that there would need to be further research is because we should really find out what is really the best method of stretching. We need to find this out because it can maximize our potential and allow an athlete to put their best performance possible. So, I can use soccer for example. There is obviously a lot of running and sprinting involved. If the athlete is not available to sprint as long or as fast as they can, then they won't be getting the most out of their potential and putting that into their game. So if we could find out if dynamic or static stretching would be better, then we can optimize our potential and put our best foot forward at all times. This is my problem statement. Is dynamic stretching or static stretching more beneficial when it comes to speed performance? I believe that dynamic stretching has better overall effects than static stretching does. It will also result in better speed performance. I believe that because it does allow your muscles to warm up instead of static stretching where you're standing still and kind of just moving your arms, your legs around, but your muscles are not warm. The participants that I chose were 12 collegiate athletes ages 18 to 22. They were recruited only from California Baptist University for this study. The participants were randomly put into 3 different groups: the dynamic, static, or no stretch. The no stretch would be the control group. The groups had 3 males and 1 female to see if the stretching was like from a female's body perspective, as in a male and female's body. Obviously, we all know that it is made differently and it is put together differently. Like, men are usually stronger, but women have wider hips, so they have a better center of gravity. The subjects were also asked how practice was from a normal practice to a very hard and long practice. This kind of pre-screening questions allows the subject to be at their best possible performance with little fatigue. So I asked them questions as, was practice harder than usual? Was it a normal day? Stuff like that, because that will allow me to gauge how well that they're putting themselves forward. And it allows to see, like, maybe if they also have an injury that they haven't told me about, or if there's something that's bothering them. Even if something's bothering them, they would not be in the study because that would be hindering the time that they would get. It would be slower than what they would normally get. So that's why I always think it would be better to have pre-screening questions before they are able to complete the 40-yard sprint. The subjects performed specific stretches for their group, either the dynamic, static, or obviously no stretch, they don't do any, and then ran a 40-yard sprint. The exercises targeted the major muscle groups of the lower body, specifically the hamstrings, quadriceps, adductor and adductor muscle groups, the gastrocnemius, and abdominal muscles. The dynamic stretch group performed 5 exercises for a distance of 20 feet each. So, for example, if they did lunge with a twist, they would they would walk, lunge with a twist for 20 feet, and then they would do the next stretch for 20 feet. The static stretch routine performed 5 stretches for 45 seconds. The no stretch did no stretches before doing the 40-yard dash. That would be our control group. The dynamic stretch routine is this. So they did a lunge with a twist, knee to chest, high kicks, hip stretch with a twist, and squat jumps. They did all of those 20 feet each, and they could go at whatever pace they would like. If they would like to take a little bit longer, they can. The static stretch routine was about 45 seconds each hold. They did the quadricep stretch or flamingos. They did the hamstring stretch or touch your toes, the groin stretch or butterflies, the glute stretch, and the hip flexor stretch. The statistical test that I used would be a one-way ANOVA. The participants completed a 40-yard sprint, and after completing one of those, I wrote their time down and took their average for their group, either the dynamic group, the static group, or the no stretch group. So like I said, I analyzed those by one-way ANOVA, and the alpha level was to be set at 0.05. So of the 3 groups that were tested, the dynamic, static, and no stretch, the dynamic stretching group came out on top. The dynamic stretching group had an average of 5 seconds for the 40-yard sprint, while the static stretching and no stretch had 5.3 and 5.6. So that is a 0.3 second difference between the static and dynamic, and then 0.6 between the dynamic and no stretch. The differences in the means, although they look small, is actually a very large gap. So when you're talking about a 40-yard dash and you're talking between 5 seconds and 5.3, that is a huge gap, and that is also a huge gap to try and close. For example, I've had to take down my 60 time, so it's like months of training to kind of get it down by 0.2 of a second. So although that looks small, it is actually a very big difference when talking about this particular activity. So this indicates that there's a very strong relationship between dynamic stretching and having a faster 40-yard sprint time, because it shows that the dynamic stretch was 0.3 or 0.6, whichever one you want to compare, seconds faster than the other ones. It could have some limitations, such as the subjects did wear whatever shoes they liked, whatever was most comfortable, so they could have more traction or they could be more lighter than other shoes, so that could be a limitation. Also, they could have been running slightly uphill, so I was not able to check if it was uphill or not. I kind of just eyeballed it and did the best I could. And there could also be a small delay because of human error with a stopwatch. So the most optimal way to do it would be a laser, but I obviously didn't have a laser, I only had a stopwatch. So there is some human error with that, but probably not too much. The future research in this topic should make sure that it is relatively even ground and the subjects are wearing the same sort of shoes. So they should all try and wear either the same, they should always try to make sure they wear the exact same shoes. Future research should also pick different exercises and maybe use exercises for the upper body as well. So when you use the upper body, when you sprint, you're actually using your upper body a lot too to propel yourself forward and to twist your upper body. So maybe if they did some with their upper body, it could be different. Future research could also test aspects other than speed, such as muscular power or agility. Those are 2 big ones that are also in the question. Although the research had some limitations, the study showed that completing a dynamic stretch routine before any type of activity or competition that involves speed should be done. So by doing a dynamic stretch routine, it is shown that it will help the subject's speed and help them become faster. So the static stretch routine proved to be less beneficial and should probably be avoided when you are stretching and getting ready for a competition. So I would say that before you want to do something in regard to speed, make sure you do a dynamic stretch routine and make sure that you do that perfectly. Thank you very much.